Halloween Ends is in theaters, and if you're wondering whether or not this movie is scary, I decided to create a system to figure out how scary the movie is and how scary it isn't. There will be 4 brackets to help calculate how scary the movie is. The first one is going to be how bloody is the movie. The second one will be how many kills are in the film. The third one is how violent the movie is. And the fourth one will relate to the jump scares and if there are any jump scares in the movie. And when talking about how bloody the movie is, in order for this bracket to succeed, we need to ask ourselves the amount of gore that's in here, the amount of blood that's in here, and is there anything in particular that has our characters being tortured physically or mentally? So how bloody is the movie? There's a fair amount of blood in here. Sometimes it felt like the movie could have been bloodier than it was, but honestly, it's still a decent amount. The gore is fairly the same as the blood. I mean, for a slasher rated R film, people get violently killed off, and sometimes when they do, they can have some amount of detriment to them. But the problem with that aspect is it needs to be done with a proper execution. You can tell what kind of idea they're going for in the story, but the directing is all off. So for the amount of blood, I would give it a 3 out of 5, and for the gore, I would also give it a 3 out of 5. But for the brutal section, I would say that gets a 2 out of 5, and it's only because it should have been executed better. So in the end, all 3 of these sections actually have calculated the bloody bracket to be an 8 out of 15. Our next bracket is going to be the amount of kills, and to figure out each and every single one of these kills, we need to figure out whether or not they meet the standards of the mature rating that this film has, how grotesque are these kills, and are there any intense scenes where our characters are trapped in a particular moment and they barely have any room to escape. So there is a total of at least 13 kills that happen in this movie, but the thing is that they're not as intense as the one in Halloween Kills. There are some kills that are pretty gory, but here's the thing. The murders in that film felt more gruesome and impactful. The kills in this movie felt more standard and regular, regardless of there being blood and some amount of guts spewed at times. So of course, the film being rated R, it can get away with a lot, but because the last film showed you could be more grotesque than what this film has showed, it was not really showing a lot of its capabilities. As for the traps, there are a ton of people who act ridiculously stupid. In a way, it's pretty funny to see how stupid the choices these characters get themselves in are. So if any of these characters get into some kind of trap and get killed off, there were other options they could have went with to escape, or they're too oblivious to realize they could have been smarter to get themselves out. So in the end, the R rating is more so a 2.5 out of 5, the grotesque rating is a 2.5 out of 5 as well, but the traps is an absolute 0 out of 5. So all 3 of these sections have calculated the kill section to be a 5 out of 15. Up next, we have the category of violence. How violent is this movie? How violent are the characters? What's their personality like? Does this movie have characters where they have driven motivation and will not stop until their goal in mind is accomplished? And when watching this film, how brutal can it get? So here's the major problem with the violence in the film. In theory, there's a way for the film to work. Its execution, however, is done terribly, mostly because it surrounds itself with horror tropes that are at the bottom of the barrel. It contains idiotic characters who are jerks that only exist to get killed off in the end, characters who are also stereotypes getting killed off as well, and when the movie has the potential to make an interesting dark story for the Halloween franchise, it never feels earned because the choices made in this film, the choices made by the characters, and the direction the film goes in is all wrong. There's an extra story that's going on relating to Michael Meyers, and while there can be credit for the film trying to do something unique, it comes off as hammy and silly rather than intimidating. Give this movie a different writer and director, I think the film, while maybe not good, would have been a lot better than this, or at the very least, somewhat intense. So for the personality, I would have to give it a 1 out of 5, and the motivation the same is also a 1 out of 5, and for how brutal it can get, it's not brutal at all. It's a 0 out of 5. So all 3 of these sections have calculated the violent bracket to be a 2 out of 15. And the last one that a good bit of people are probably wondering, how many jump scares are in the movie, or are there any jump scares at all? And do these jump scares actually linger on with some traumatization during the scene, or do they just have a very loud noise and just get you tensed up for just a second? If you guys enjoy watching these videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell, that way you can be notified when future videos come out, and be sure to hit that like button and comment down below, what did you think of Halloween Ends? The jump scares in here all pretty much are weak. There's at least 7 jump scares that happen in here, but half of them are basically fake out, and most of them happen at the beginning or at least somewhere in the first act. But somewhere around the middle, it tries to go back into what makes a jump scare actually somewhat intimidating. And of course, those jump scares are going to be related to Michael Meyers. But the thing is that those jump scares, they've never been anything special or memorable. Here's what you really need to do if you want to create a great jump scare. Be sure you let the scene settle in, get lost in the scene where you forgot to be tense when the audience least expects it, scare them, and afterwards lay it on them. Give them the proper send-off of how intense and brutal that moment is supposed to be. Whether it's killing off the characters, intimidating them, or whatever you have in mind. Go watch the movie The Thing, and you'll find the perfect example of how you could do a jump scare correctly. This film just doesn't do it right. So this one gets a 0 out of 5. Alright, so now all 4 brackets have their numbers. It's time to figure out the percentage of how scary Halloween Ends actually is. And when calculating everything and figuring out all of the numbers, it turns out that Halloween Ends is actually 30% scary. This movie has a pretty good concept, and it could have been somewhat scary, but this execution is done hokey and idiotically and too far-fetched to the point where it feels more like a schlocky film that you can laugh along with your friends because it's that bad of a horror movie. It does a lot of things wrong in terms of having cinematography, acting, dialogue. It's all off. Again, the big thing about this film is that it's somewhat interesting, but to be honest, it just doesn't stick the landing when it comes to the final product. So I say no, you're not really going to be that scared with the film. So what did you think of Halloween Ends? Did you think that the movie was scary, or did you think it was not scary at all? Do you agree with this rating system, or do you think that this system needs to be updated a little bit? Put your thoughts down in the comment section below, and let's have a conversation about it. And like this video if you agree with what I say, or dislike this video if you disagree with what I say. I don't mind the dislikes. So that is it I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video.